Here's what you're about to listen to on today's Player Driven. Today, I'm meeting with Lewis and Matt, the two co-founders of Old Glory Studios, a new indie studio found by a pair of US veterans. We talk about some really cool topics, including why did they decide to go indie? They had AAA roots, they were building in AAA, and they decided to go indie. So why did they decide to make that jump? How did they go about finding the fund first when they were looking into the idea? And they have a really cool fundraising round going on right now, which is worth listening to hear how they're going about it and which makes them a little bit different. It's a really fun episode. Matt and Lewis are just awesome to talk with, and I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Player Driven. We have a really fun episode today with a great indie studio that's starting up. We are with co-founders Lewis Manalo and Matt Patak, who are building out Old Glory Studios. They have a lot of experience from companies like Ubisoft, Sharkmob, Massive Entertainment, Certain Affinity. Lots of cool studios, lots of great experience building this new game that's coming out. New games that are coming out. I'm excited to learn more. So, Lewis, Matt, we'll start with you, Lewis, to try and keep order here. How are you
Sure.
doing? Anything you'd like to say about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thanks very much. My name is Louis Manalo. I'm the executive producer at Old Glory Studios.
Thanks, Lewis.
Yeah.
Matt?
Yep, Matt Patak, creative director at Old Glory Studios, and excited to be here. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, I am too. We're at the rise of these indie studios, right? And you guys are
Yeah.
combat veterans, so thank you for your service. And I'm excited to kind of
you.
learn why you want to start your own studio, what you're trying to build, and what's the differentiator with Old Glory Studios. So maybe we could start with kind of like your elevator pitch, right? Who is Old Glory Studios?
Sure. So we're an independent studio. We were founded at the end of 2023. Matt and I are both experienced AAA game developers. Some of my biggest titles are Ghost Recon Wildlands, Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Did some work in the Dying Light 2 franchise. And Matt has been with Massive. He was with Massive for a while, worked on Division 1 and 2. We met while working at Sharkmob. But we also, when we met there, we are also both, it's a Swedish studio. So we're two of the few Americans working there at the time. And we're both also combat veterans. And basically the way our studio happened is, like Matt moved back to the States about a year before I did. When my work visa ran out, I came back to the States. But we kept in touch. And then basically Matt had an idea for a game that I really wanted to play. So I was like, well, let's just make this happen. So
Cool. Matt, you want to tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, it's been an idea like over 20 years in the making. We can get into that when the time is right. But yeah, so Lewis and I worked together at Sharkmob. I was lead level designer on Exoborn. It's not yet released, but it's in like closed and open beta testing, I think, right now. But they're doing really well, getting a lot of positive feedback. Lewis was senior narrative on there, so we had to interact a lot, talking about different points of interest, different narrative stories for these characters and elements that you're interacting with in the world itself. So we connected on that, our military background, and a common buddy that we had kind of linking us all together. And yeah, my time in Europe was done. I had to head back home to get closer to family. Yeah, like Lewis said, I left about a year before he did. Yeah, when he contacted me when he got back, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm working on this. Like, this is great. Like, let's." And I think we can make our own studio, and I think we should do this. Like, he's like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." So for me, it was really exciting that to go, with in this this adventure with Lewis, just because I know our passion. We got that drive and that experience. We have the military background, both combat veterans, and yeah, that's kind of like again the spur of our name, Old Glory Studios. We wanted to be very pro-American and represent not just ourselves, but veterans, service members, and people like this across the United States as a whole.
I'm so curious. You have both of you have the veteran background, right? And Lewis, your narrative, Matt, your level design. What kind of like so you're in high school, right? Let's call it high school, right? How does this order of operations go? Do you just sign up for the be a part of the services and then you kind of learn the gaming stuff, the aspect there? Were you already studying this stuff and you decided you wanted to go into the military to help pay for what is the order of operations here?
You go
Take
ahead,
it,
Matt.
Lewis.
Since your
All right.
your starts in high school, right? So
Yes, it does. Yeah, I always played games. I was always a big gamer. I even got bullied in middle school for being too much of a gamer, you know. And yeah, it's just like I've always had this passion. Never really understood that I wanted or ever could join the military. So I went to school right after high school. I went to like a local college right after high school to study multimedia. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Just wanted to try to figure it out. 9/11 happened, and I hated the school I was going to. It was so dull, so boring, so dry, and I was so vague. I didn't know what to do. So yeah, I took the chance to kind of take a few months to think about it. Talked about it with some recruiters, my mom, my dad, and everybody else, and landed with the army. And during that time, yeah, everyone in the barracks, everyone plays video games, and everyone's a gamer, and we're all a bunch of teenagers and goofy guys just hanging out and doing LAN parties and stuff, and in the barracks. And yeah, it really assured me that there is a career here. I like this, and I like modifying some missions and stuff. And the original Operation Flashpoint, if anybody knows this editor, it's super cool. But yeah, I went to school after that, used the GI Bill, and studied game design, and made a portfolio and landed my first job in the industry. So
That's awesome. I guess from the outside looking in, I wouldn't think you join the army, and all of a sudden you find your like-minded gaming guys just
yeah,
out there in the
for
barracks. That's
sure.
awesome. I feel like that you're
There are so many gamers in the barracks, man. Shout out to all you guys. Like, love you all. So
love it. That's
yeah,
awesome. Lewis?
yeah. And for me, I actually video games was not anywhere on my radar, honestly. So I actually went to NYU Film School, and I after I graduated that, I was working already in the film industry, also doing some writing. But after I graduated from college, I moved across the Hudson River to Jersey City. So when September 11th happened, I watched the World Trade Center fall from my apartment window. So after that, it was like I'd have family members who'd served before me. I mean, it hadn't been anything that I'd considered up to that point, but after that, everyone I cared about was on Manhattan or in the DC area, so I enlisted after that. Um, and then, after like 3 years serving with the 82nd Airborne, I came out, tried to get back into film and writing. It was a very slow process. I ended up producing some documentaries that were shot in South America, like in the Amazon jungle mostly. Um, and then I also was writing, and I wrote a play about some soldiers stuck on a mountaintop in Afghanistan. And at a reading at NYU, and an old friend of mine came and saw it. And then a few months later, he called me up and invited me to work with him writing for Ghost Recon Wildlands. So that's how I ended up in the games industry.
Love it. Again, kind of a full circle moment. I appreciate both of your services that you've done. I shout out to Jersey City. I lived in Jersey City for some of the best years of my life. So
There you
love
go.
that. And now you're both in this gaming world. And I love Lewis. I've have so many questions about narrative design, but now is not the time for it because that would be a very focused podcast. But you guys are bringing two different expertise to the new studio. And I'm curious, why now? We've seen a whole lot of things happening with AAA studios struggling, right? And it is a rise, but like, how does a narrative designer and a level designer decide, hey, you know what? We're going to build a studio. How do you, A, identify that the time is right, and B, how do you know you have the right people there to do it? And Matt, you want to kick it off, or?
yeah, I'll actually let Lewis kick it off.
Yeah, so again, it comes back to why I was so keen to why I wanted to play the game that Matt was describing when we were talking, because Matt and I both, like, very early in our careers, we were working in these Tom Clancy games where authenticity, with Ubisoft, was a huge part of it. Like, basically, I was hired because I'd served with special operators and I'd been to South America, and I could write a little bit, right? So but AAA games, they've been basically veering away from that. So like military themed games, like these Tom Clancy games, like Call of Duty, they've gone further and further to closer to Fortnite. So you can play as Snoop Dogg in Call of Duty or as Nicki Minaj. Which so we're lacking that authenticity that kind of that was something that we could bring and identify with. But meanwhile, on the other side of the spectrum, you have some very hardcore like military games that are really military simulators. Like Hell Let Loose and like Squad, where and Arma and in some of these games, like the players can get very into like the minutia detail about how authentic something is, and if you're and if a game if the animation in the game doesn't load the rifle correctly, then the game is garbage, and that's great for those people. And but it's niche if we're honest, right? So basically, we saw there's just big gap in the market of games that have authenticity but are still very accessible. So we're hoping to fill that in with that. So like I said before, my background is in film. So for me, I've had production companies in the past. I've started them several times, and basically in independent film specifically, because that's where I started in the '90s. The Each production company, it was really just two people. Like it would be a producer and a director, right? Maybe there might be someone to help in the office as well, right? But that's basically how we're structuring our studio as well. And part of this is because we want to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that have hit a lot of AAA studios or studios of any size at this point, really. So just like how for an independent film, you're not going to hire Matt Damon on salary and put him on 401k, right? So we hire our developers freelance right now, and we work with co-development studios, just like an independent film studio would work with the post-production house, so things like that. So for me, there was the timing has to do with not just the product, which even if we were a bigger studio already, like staffed up, this would probably be something we would want to do. But also because of the way that the industry itself is going, like this is a good time to also try and make this type of business model work.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Like, yeah, that the trend of the market it's right for the idea that we're trying to achieve here. So I think this is what's going on wrong with the AAA gaming space is they are just trend followers. They're not really trend setters. They're, extraction shooters are a dime a dozen now, where back in the day, PUBG was like one out of like it was like, holy cow, this is so revolutionary. And now it's so commonplace. And then you take it to like battle royales, like everyone's kind of either like going down this route, Fortnite, Apex Legends, and what have you. And then if it's not that, if it's a military type game, like Lewis was talking about, either Squad or Arma or, Hell Let Loose, you could almost classify these as walking simulators and like, this like reenactment simulators. Basically it's like, use my rank you. It's like, come on, like this is a game. Like I love those guys. I actually was on one of those type of squads in the past with Operation Flashpoint, literally having to salute the officers and everything. It's like, okay, cool. But for us, it's just like the AAA space doesn't really explore what really makes a game fun. They look at what's working across the board and try to mimic that. Like I've seen this a dime a dozen every time in studios that I worked for. We design by trend. Like what's happening now? This game is popping. Like Valheim, I think was a great game at the time. It's like, let's do a loot system like Valheim. That's a great one. And then different like Left 4 Dead 2 was, like when I first started in the industry was like really popping, and then people like, oh, let's make like this cooperative stuff with these little gadgets and things. Like they don't really come there with any kind of spark, because they, again, there's so much bloat, there's so many salaries that they have to pay. They can't really take those risks because they're the headquarters or whatever just wouldn't allow them to, because it's a risk that they're financially not willing to take financially. So that's, I think, what's going wrong, and that's where we come in to play with our project.
Yeah,
so.
Being smaller, being just a studio which is really just two core people, it allows us to be a lot more nimble. And and again, that also comes back to like independent film. Like look at independent film in the '90s, they could take really big risks on things. Like really weird movies got made at the time, because it was a smaller financial risk that backers had to take.
Yeah, and we spoke a little bit about this on our pre-call, right? And I appreciate a lot of the stuff you guys just said, and I just kind of want to recap through some of it. So, Lewis, you were
Yeah.
talking about creating something a little more realistic than the games we're seeing today when it comes to shooters, right? And we talked about this, right? Back in the day, if you were to tell people the original Rainbow Six had like this whole beginning where you had to plan out where your operators are going to go, which weapons they have to
Yep.
do, what they have to do
Yeah.
beforehand, I don't think a single person would tell you, but we're like itching for those games, me and my friends these days. Like they don't
Yeah.
exist anymore. The tactical cooperative shooter, right? It all became,
Yeah.
and Siege is a great game, right? I know it's changed
Yeah.
since I've been like,
Fingers crossed that update
I
comes
know,
out.
right? But like,
Fingers crossed that update.
I mean, it was bananas that Siege has been around for over 10 years at this point, right?
Mhm.
Like that first few years of Siege was unlike any game I've ever seen. And same thing you
Yep.
mentioned with PUBG, right? Like when PUBG
Mhm.
first came out, that was that first shooter. And then what happens is what Matt said is that uh,
Yeah.
everyone chases trends. We see the hottest
Mhm.
trend, and all of a sudden you have 57,000 extraction shooters, battle royales, right?
Yep.
Because the people who are funding these, the money is saying, hey, we're not taking chances. This is where smart money is. But we're starting to see that backfire in the marketplace, right? You see
Yeah.
triple A's
Sure.
are just dying before they even come out. Not because they're not good, but they're not listening to what the players want either, right? It kind of goes both ways. Like, A, they're shoving this stuff
Exactly.
Yep.
in our face, and B, they're not listening to us. And it becomes something that's really frustrating. And you kind of came around at the end, Lewis, and said, indies, you didn't say indies, but they're more nimble. They don't
Yeah.
have the
That's right.
MBA at the top, or the person who's at the top saying, hey, this is what you need to do. You have that creative freedom. And that's what I love when I start hearing you guys talk about Old Glory and what you guys are going to do. So out of my own curiosity, right? Like after speaking to a lot of game directors, they always talk about finding the fun. Do you guys kind of have this idea of like, what do we want to include in our games that get people hooked? Or am I getting ahead of myself?
No,
Yeah,
Matt, it's like baked into Matt's ideas. So yeah, go ahead.
yeah, it's a game I've always been dreaming of, and I know that there's a crowd for it. Obviously, we do like we're doing play tests and like doing like tweaks based on feedback. But yeah, ultimately, I'm trying to avoid again the design by trend and just really keeping it like a unique experience, a focused experience. Like there is, a gold nugget in this, giant ore. We just got to carve through all the other, materials around it to get to it. It's just like the process to get there. And yeah, it's like I'm really like harkening back to what Rainbow Six Siege is doing. Like they had something great. They had that nugget, and they, it got covered with a bunch of mud, in my opinion. Like it became something that it just wasn't, and that's what I'm trying to keep this project in focus of what it is as opposed to what it is not. So it's different. It's a classic take on the kind of 5v5 version of gameplay that we've all had, but kind of like hybrid with other RTS elements and different other kind of situations, like very highly destructible dynamic environments, and replayability is a big part of what we're doing here. And so yeah, we're just trying to make something that every time you play, it's always something unique, fun, and interesting, and really like a spectacle for the eyes. Like it should, and the ears, and all the senses.
Mhm.
Really, like it. Yeah.
No, and really quickly, I don't want us to sound like we're just bashing on like AAA studios. You
No,
know what
no,
I mean?
yeah,
Because there's a lot of really like the most talented people like I've worked with or
absolutely.
been at AAA studios. But again, like part of it is that like there's little room for innovation, right? So some of these really talented people, their ideas don't get heard, or they don't get implemented, or they get squashed because of whatever bureaucracy. And then of course there are certain things that AAA games can do that like they're like so far out of our scope, like in Red Dead Redemption 2, just having your character's beard grow. You know what I mean? Like I'd
Yeah,
be really like impressed with any indie studio that could do that. But
one
again,
day,
like
one day.
yeah. But again, finding the fun though, like that's something that's fundamental. And again, because we're smaller, because we're nimble, because we're working directly with playtesters, even, uh, that's an advantage that we have.
Yeah, I wouldn't take it as bashing AAA. I think
Yeah.
there's the true passion does live in AAA gaming. It's just the people making the game rather than
Yeah.
company around it that kind of controls that. I was talking to my buddy today, right? He worked at NetEase, right? They created Marvel Rivals, and his whole team just got laid off,
Hmm.
which is crazy
Yeah.
because Marvel Rivals is doing great right now. They just took a look
Huge.
at
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
Washington branch and just decided to axe everybody that was there. It's just like,
Crytek
Oh
had a big
man.
layoff too. Crytek had one, and
yeah. So
Kingdom Come Deliverance should, yeah, it's
that's why these
yeah,
big
it's
teams, I
rough.
mean, they're great, right? But
Hmm.
how do you need to pay them at the end of the day? And that becomes a little bit of a struggle.
That's
And
right.
how do you manage it,
Exactly.
right? And
So
Yeah,
honestly, I think a lot of the layoffs of the last 2 years, they're basically because like money was so cheap with the COVID boom. Like the hire and fire cycle that normally happens with games was just on steroids.
yep.
So again, it's always kind of been there, but that's sort of another reason why we structured ourselves this way to work with freelancers. For example, our character concept artist. She actually comes from comic books. She used to draw Nick Varela. She used to draw for Deadpool and All New Wolverine and stuff. But like we know we're not going to need her full time. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to hire a character artist and then keep them on after the work's done. You know, so there are a lot of roles like that a lot of these studios. A lot of those roles in the industry, honestly, would probably be better off freelance. Like as a writer, I've done almost I've done the huge majority of my career freelance. So
Yeah, especially because unfortunately so many people were affected by the layoffs, right? There's a lot of great talent out there, right?
mhm.
And even as someone that's working, it's nice to have that steady paycheck, but it's also nice to have the flexibility of working the projects that I want to work, as long as I have that option available to me. So I love the idea of going
correct.
with freelancers. I think it's kind of a win-win for all parties involved, right? You get to work on something new, you get to work on something different, but you also, you're not tied up for the long run. And I think, people
Yeah.
may think that's not a positive, but you've seen stories of people that work at companies like Bungie, right, or even
Hmm.
Activision, where you just built that same game over and over again. It's just like, all right, I'm tired of building this game. I want to go do something new
Yeah,
and try something new.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know
No,
people that have started their career at Epic Games, and they'll be there till the day they die. So it's yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but again, like going back to the what's analogous with film, like I don't know, like your film directors, like David Ayer, he's not an employee. You know what I mean? For each film he makes, whether it's Suicide Squad or whatever Jason Statham movie, like he's freelance.
yep.
And but at the same time, he still has very much a creative voice in the products that he's making. So.
So let's go back to Old Glory, right? So you two probably took a look at each other, had this conversation, said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's go for it. Let's build this, right? How do you identify what's missing from the team? Like, do you immediately say, hey, we need someone that's in charge of the business side of things, or an artist, like you mentioned? Like, how do you recognize where your weaknesses might be, and how do you approach that?
Oh well, straight off the bat, like again, we divided what the work is. So I have experience, in film production as a film producer. So basically, I'm taking care of most of the business side of it. Matt's taking care of the bulk of the creative side. But obviously, each decision, each field affects the other. So we definitely like collaborate on a ton of stuff. Um, but then in terms of like building out the team, we could do it basically pretty ad hoc. So it's what we need at the time, very much. So we were able to get to our first playable prototype just using freelancers. Like I think we had a total of two who worked on like two freelancers who worked on that, and honestly, like we were able to get to our first playable prototype, which is most of the footage that we have out on our social media and on YouTube comes from our first playable prototype, and we got to that in 8 months in under 100 grand. You know, and that so we bootstrapped that. So now that we're starting to scale up again, that's when we started getting co-developers actually reaching out to us. But then so we're working with a couple different co-developers that we have agreements signed with, and then some more freelancers. As we decided, okay, this game works, this prototype works, we're gonna build it out so that it's work on the vertical slice and so on. So
Say something.
yeah, yeah. I just wanted like yeah with the project too. It's just like we've scoped it down to the point where, like Lewis said, with the first playable prototype, the most achievable, and just keeping the focus narrow, but the quality high, and that's our goal from this from the get go is to really release something that's not just like it just achieves like a dream. It's just, it literally will, like, I'm hoping be like, again, a very beautiful project, a very fun to play game, and it'll be extremely engaging for players, as opposed to just like, okay, they load it up once and they're done with it. It should always keep them coming back. And so for me, that's super important. And yeah, like I said, Lewis was saying, we've divvied up the responsibilities, and yeah, it's just a matter of, again, keeping the eye on the prize and knowing what's the next target goal to reach and how do we reach it together. So
What were some of those findings you found during the first playtest that you heard from players?
It's fun. That's
yeah,
really like the
In the
biggest,
conversation.
yeah,
like, no, like that was really like the biggest thing. Any time that you have a playable prototype, that's really the thing you get the most nervous about. Like, okay,
yes,
so we worked on this for a few months now. Like I've worked on some prototypes for years, and to have to wait years to figure out, is this thing fun? And then to be, for us, we were relieved. Oh, it was fun. But imagine if you worked for 2 years on something, you decide, this is not fun. This is confusing. What am
yeah,
I doing? So for us, like as soon as we figured that out, that it was fun, that people playing it were having a great response, then yeah, we were like, all right, we need to get some more funding here, and we need to
yep.
start scaling this game up. So
Yeah, like scaling it up with the playtest as well. I know, like a lot of people keep coming in for the playtest to help us out, and they're having a great time. But we're trying to just keep adding more features as we go, and obviously, pitch and polish, and add like changes as we can. But it was a great response, and obviously every game has their quirks and bugs. Like the way we connect is old school janky stuff, but we're going to get there. We need like back end development and stuff, but we're working towards that and focusing on what really matters. And I think it's a really good experience every time to play. Like I play it all the time just because I have to test it. I'm working all the time, but I really do love just running around, single player mode, just kind of like looking at the trees and pretending that I'm in a battle at the server's full or something like that.
So I have some more questions on the game itself, but
Yeah.
usually about halfway through, I think we're past that, but we do a fireball round. I'm going to throw a couple questions at you guys, and good to
sure.
go?
Let's
All right.
go.
Each one, let's start with Lewis first, just so we got the order of operations here. What is the last
Okay.
show you binged watched?
I just binge watched Silo, actually, like second season yesterday. So
There we go.
yeah, like I liked the book; it was okay, but like the show, actually, I like how they're doing it a lot. So
Okay. Matt?
Actually, Terror was like the Northern Passage exploration TV
yeah,
show on Netflix. Really awesome.
nice.
Awesome.
Love it.
What did you have for breakfast?
I had two sunny side up eggs and a croissant and coffee.
A bowl of yogurt with protein powder and a cup of tea. So
What was the last game you played?
I think the last game I played was Roblox Rivals. I play it with my kids, and I take enjoyment in poning noobs.
Nice.
solo operations mode in Delta Force. Yeah, I get owned, but it's a good experience.
Nice. Love it. Last question I have for you guys is, what is your dream vacation?
Probably just a cabin by the lake and a big stack of books.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I would say like there's that really awesome town. I think it's in Austria, like tucked up in the Alps with a really awesome giant lake. Like just being able to be there for like, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks just to chill and go skiing and eat a lot of great food.
Perfect. All right. So, Lewis, what you said, I think it was you before we went, is that your timing, it was quicker to find the fun in the playtest. And I think that's awesome. Like you mentioned, like the game, I think it was Sharkmob that you worked on, is still in the process of coming out, which is, how long has that been, right? That's like, it must be awesome to be able to build something in a couple months, put it out there, and get that feedback in a couple months. Has it kind of?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
No, so I mean, because we both left Sharkmob, before it was at this phase, before we could see how far it's gone. So, honestly, a lot of what's in the game now we can't take credit for. I think some of the Matt stuff though I still saw in this latest playtest, so like I'll let him take credit for that stuff. But
The
I don't know
Angry
if
Bird
it,
or something in there. So, yeah.
the oil rig's still up in there,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. That was
Yeah,
just as I was leaving. Yeah, we set that one up, but it's not obviously the concept was there, but it like
yeah.
the map is completely changed. So
Yeah, but no, that whole team of level designers is amazing out there.
yeah,
But yeah, in terms of finding the fun immediately, it is this is actually what first playable prototypes are supposed to be. If you play it and it's not fun, you haven't spent so much money or spent so much time that you can't just start over. And honestly, like we were in that spot. Like I said, we didn't even spend 100 grand. Honestly, I think it was something like 70 grand. And this is us bootstrapping it. Probably less actually, right? So, and then, but if it wasn't fun, we would have been able to pivot pretty easily. Didn't have a lot of resources or people committed to this one direction, you know?
The money itself is tough to get these days, right? Along with the layoffs, right? Funding, I'm not going to say is dried up, but we'll go with something that's similar to those terms, where it's not easy to get funding, and we are seeing some great indies rise, right? Like so it is possible. But something that you're doing, which is different than what I've seen out there, is you're kind of going crowdfunding, and I'm curious on. Maybe you could just explain what that means to our listeners, but why did you decide to go through that approach and what does it mean for players?
Sure. So as opposed to like Kickstarters, which is a pledge driven crowdfund, we're doing a equity crowdfund, a Reg CF specifically. Um, you'll see the exact same thing happening on platforms like WeFunder or Start Engine. We're going through this platform called Fola Capital, which focuses on veteran owned businesses. But basically, what it is you raise funds by going to the public and people who would be wanting to support the type of product you are making or the type of business that you are through these platforms. They can make investments that honestly, sometimes like a lot of our investments have been small and they've really been more a show of support as opposed to someone trying to make big bank out of this sort of thing. And like Kickstarters, we will also offer bonuses as well, like for different levels of investment. So, but I think it's it became legal. I believe like this type of funding became it was enacted. It was part of the Jobs Act under Obama that allowed this type of crowdsourced, basically private investment happen. And So it's only been around really since like 2016. It's more common in small businesses, I guess. And But there've been a couple other studios that have done this in the past couple of years too.
It's fascinating. I think it's a really cool idea, right? We see so much about community in games these days, right? And trying to build up what they're just trying to build support around the game, right? And this gives players who have the funds available, right, an opportunity to say, "Hey, I really like this game. I want a piece of this game. I want to be involved in this game somehow," right? And I think it's a really cool. Have you heard from people that were considering donating, have donated, have pledged, right? Like, have you spoken to them to kind of get their feedback and thoughts on how things are going? How does your involvement with them work?
Yeah, we're very open to all of we have we're very easy to reach with all these people, and we even have one of the channels in our Discord server is for investors. You know, but it's honestly a lot of the strongest response we've gotten have been from veterans who are also gamers. So like Matt said, like gaming, like especially if you live in the barracks, it's a big part of the culture. uh, yeah, like when I was in, it was Halo 2 LAN parties. We'd string the cables between like through the roof tiles from one room to the other, to hook up the Xboxes and stuff. So, and there's a huge community out there of veterans who are gamers. They come together in places, different Discord servers, like Regiment is one, um, and they're it's going to be a different kind of crowd, I guess. But it's like your own tribe.
Mhm.
So again, so these people, we want to be able to give them something that they'll enjoy. We want to be able to represent veterans well, and also like real veterans, honestly. So one of the things that I talk about a lot is like, like a lot of the work I've done has been for Ubisoft, and again, great games, great opportunities there. But there's always this back and forth because there's always some French designer who's trying to tell me, well, this is what American Spec Ops behaves like. And I'm just like, well, one, they don't even call them Spec Ops, So to be able to kind of do it to present, military, to present service members and veterans in a less filtered way, let's call it, with less stereotyped way, frankly, really appreciate too. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, to harken like to bring it towards the gamer side as opposed to the veteran side is just knowing that this crowdfund it's a new experience for me too, because I have seen Kickstarters in the past and understand what those take, but this is it's not just a Kickstarter or crowdfund, it's literally like you're getting an equity in Old Glory Studios, so our success becomes your success. And that's something I think is super intriguing for me. Is like, if most Kickstarters had this option, I'd probably be investing in more Kickstarters more often for sure. So
It's interesting, and one of my questions I have is, when you, I guess, where is funding going towards now, right? You have a playable version of the game. Obviously, you need to build everything out more, but like, where does investments go at this stage?
it goes really straight into production at this point. There is, some of what we've received so far we have spent on, PR and marketing, but it really is at this point. We're trying to our next big goal, our next big gate is our vertical slice, which we hope to have done in May. So a lot of that stuff, we need to art up the environments we have now. We need to implement a lot of the personalizations for characters, because we know these players from all these other games, and we know the type of personalization that people in that the military shooter crowd want to have. So we want to be able to have at least some of that in the vertical slice. So that's where all the funds are mostly going now. But ideally, ideally we'll be able to have a beta, which we'll hopefully use as like a early access release within a year. So.
Wow. What tools are you using to build out the game? I'm curious, engine wise, and like, what's it running on?
Unreal 5.5, the latest version of Unreal right at the moment. So I'm constantly keeping that sucker up to date as we go, because they got a lot of great tools that like it's a really awesome tool to use for a developer, and like keeping that up to date as possible. So if we ever do hit a gate at the end of our milestones or something, that okay, now we have a solid build, but we want to access this new feature, it should be a simple overnight switch. Because a lot of studios I've worked at, they're kind of trapped with a certain version of Unreal, and they can't really advance it forward because the work to advance it forward would just be too much to do, and too costly, too time consuming. So always updating.
Always updating. I was also heard this. I mean, some of the AI tools I know that are built into Unreal 5. I know it lets you scale quickly, build quickly. We've done a number of podcasts with indies that are building
Yeah,
AAA style quality games in a matter
Yeah.
of weeks and months compared to years. Like, you're seeing that because of Unreal and
absolutely.
what they have to offer.
Yeah, no, there are tons of great tools like that now, that are even just in the last couple of years. But I mean, like just having engines available again is like a huge
Yes,
boon, right?
this
Um,
was not a thing 10 years ago at all.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that we're struggling with creatively, let's say, is what we're trying to do is really make the game look unique. Like one of the problems with Unreal Engine being so great and being able to work so quickly with it is that a lot of Unreal Engine games do look the same. I think it's a legitimate criticism that players have. So we really want to make sure that when people boot up the game, like from the first screen that they see, like it's going to look unique and it's going to feel unique.
So the first game is Victory's Grave Outflank, and it's tactical PvP. I think, Matt, you were saying earlier, destructible
Yep.
environments, defense building, which is something that's interesting because I've been loving tower defense style games where you can kind of
You
Hmm.
build those
got it.
things in there.
Yep.
Like, what's the experience like? Like, you keep saying you want to build something that's a little different than the Call of Duty experience or the Fortnite experience right now. Like,
for sure.
Who is buying this game, and what kind of what is or sorry, who is playing this game, and kind of what's it have?
Yeah, so we kind of touched on it before. The Rainbow Six Siege community is absolutely something we're kind of dialing in towards. The squad community, like if the Call of Duty community, like it's got a flavor for each and every person of one of these communities. And if you kind of, if you want to go all, I'll use the term sweaty and get crazy and, click heads everywhere, you can. But then also if you're just looking like a father of three and you got very limited time on your hands, you could still compete and be an asset to your team in this project as well, given the design of it. So it's not so hardcore and intimidating to jump into, but it's also not casual. It's easy to learn, hard to master. So that's what we want to focus on. And also just get people to feel like the intensity of combat, get that the environment to really immerse them, the audio to really be crunchy and snappy and very very surreal. And I use the term exaggerated realism. If this the way the bullet cracks over your head, well, let's exaggerate that, let's dial that up by 100% or more. Like just like what Saving Private Ryan did for the movie industry when it came to kind of sound effects in movies and the way that you should feel when it comes to like a war movie. I'm thinking back to when I was a kid, like watching any kind of John Wayne war movie. The guy would get shot, he'd grab his chest and fall over. It's like but then you see Saving Private Ryan, and it blew everybody's minds. Like it's the same concept, but just amplified. Like it's for shock value, and like obviously I don't think we're going to go down the Soldier of Fortune route, but it's like the intensity and the feeling of what it's like to be in combat and in a firefight. So
I think one of the unique things too with Matt's designs is the emphasis on the team play.
That's right.
Like even the way that we want to structure, the ongoing support for the game is focused more on team. So, for example, like if you get a Fortnite battle pass, you will progress yourself to get whatever vanity items and cool weapons and skins, things like that. But the subscriptions that we're hoping to do, we're really hoping on having an in-game league. We've been talking actually with Mike Rufael, whose his gamer tags Hastro. He owns Team Envy, right? So he's already been giving us a lot of good advice on things that are going to be much more team oriented, like in the game. Right. So when the team subscribes, that those vanity items like that uniform or those weapon skins, those will be something available to everyone who's a member of the team, things like that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like the example I love to use, Lewis is probably going to get tired of this, is I use like the Dallas Cowboys have the Dallas Cowboys, locker room and jerseys and colors and stuff. And that's what makes them unique as compared to like the 49ers or somebody else. It's their identifier. So yeah, it's like if you join a team, like you get all that team has access to. You get their locker room, their gym, their meal plans and everything else. Like it would be along those lines. We're really focusing in on what makes a team special. And so if you're on that team, you should feel special because of the team, not necessarily because of your individual accomplishments. As a team collectively, you should feel great. And that's why I think a lot of games they push so heavily towards the individual accomplishments that the any kind of team play is just kind of like forgotten about. Like classic example for me is Battlefield. Like I'll take it to Battlefield Bad Company. I just remember I'm like an engineer repairing a tank, and like I crest this certain point. Now I got access to this gun. I'm like, oh well, all I got to do is just repair stuff to get more guns. I'm not doing it to help the team. I'm doing it to get stuff for myself. Like okay, I'm just going to keep repairing every tank that I see. It kind of it's good intentions, but focused in the wrong direction, in my opinion. So,
yeah, I love team aspect. I think I like your Cowboys, other than it being the Cowboys as your example. But I love it's an honor to wear that jersey, to wear that uniform, to be a part of that, right? Yes. And if you go into that team, like you should feel honored. Like I play Call of Duty with my buddies, and one guy hates domination because he doesn't know how to hold the spot. I'm like, we still need you to go out there and do your other stuff. Like, just keep doing what you do good, and I'll take the spot. Like, people don't understand that. Like, you can do things for not get the credit but still win as a team. And when you build that team
Absolutely.
feeling, then you all win as a team, and you have that, like, that makes you want to go for that next game, whether you just win or you just lose. You're like, we got to do one more, we got to do one more. Like,
Yeah,
it
That's
just
right.
keeps that itch itchy, and I think it's such a fantastic way to have
absolutely.
it.
That's right. There's also that, like, I think there's a fundamental boundary of getting into those teams that a lot of people are like, oh, team games. Oh man, I don't want to work together. But if it's easy to see and understand like, it's like understanding the game and the league and how we're have this set up. And it's like, I want this to be as seamless and transitionally like easy for people as possible. Like, again, the accessibility should be like 1 to 2 clicks. You should be able to really join some kind of team and participate in this event, or you could literally just 1 click, just kind of play your random unranked matches or whatever you got in your spare time, no problem. But like, you're always 1 click away from the pros. Like, you're 1 or 2 clicks away from being, on that championship winning team. Like,
Yeah.
it should be that simple. So
All right, I have one last question for you guys, and that is, this journey has taken you almost a full year now, right? If you look back at it and you can do one thing different, and you can each have a different answer, what would you do different up to this point?
It's because honestly, things haven't. There's always going to be struggles in any kind
yeah,
of creative endeavor, but I don't think there's any big regrets. If anything, we might have
no,
started the raise sooner. All right, because that was
possibly,
always
yeah,
the issue. It was the timing of this particular crowdfund was weird because in November, oh, there was the election. You don't want to try to mess with that, and then suddenly it's Christmas. And then it's like, well, everybody's going to be worried about Christmas. And then it's January, and then it's like, well, everybody just spent their money on Christmas. So maybe we should have started it sooner, or maybe we should have started it later. But that's honestly the only thing. Just kind of because there's always going to be something else. There's always something that you deal with, and one of the things that I think a lot of people who want to go indie, they need to understand is that you're not gonna have all the answers. There's
yep,
always you're gonna have to become very comfortable with not knowing things, and it's for a lot of reasons because things are always changing. Like the market's always changing. There are always new tools. Just the medium is always changing. So everything is always going to be new in a way. So like we've done. I think the best anyone could expect to do, honestly. Unless
absolutely,
they unless they're they're godfathers like Elon Musk and could just sprinkle money on them.
yeah.
So
Yeah, same.
Right?
No regrets, man. Yeah, absolutely what Lewis is saying. The timing was super important, but yeah, no regrets. Like, I think we've done it as, I guess, as soundly as we could have. Like, I don't know, like,
mhm.
nothing jumps off the page is like, oh, I wish I could get that back again. Resave. Nope.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah, exactly. Don't want to load any old saves.
Yeah.
That's the beauty, is like, there's no reason to dwell in the mistakes of the past. You just learn from it,
Mhm.
you adapt, and you go forward, and you keep building upon what you build, right?
Yeah.
If you sit there and you dwell on it, you're gonna just kind of sit in your own shit for God knows how long.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, the old adage, happiness is not the destination, it's the journey.
There you
So
go. I haven't heard that. I feel like I should have heard that a lot sooner in my life.
there you
Now that I know
go.
it.
Yeah, it's the doing. That's right. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna leave this one to Lewis. Lewis, where
Sure.
can we find Old Glory Studios? Where can we help pledge? What can we do?
Sure. First, you can go to oldglorystudios.us. If you want to support us, there's a link there. There's also just information about us and the games that we're making. And please, also, you can go on Steam to find Victory's Grave Outflank. Just wish list it and follow it on there too.
Cool. We will have links to Old Glory. We'll have it to Victory's Grave. Both of you, Matt, Lewis, any final statements you want to say before we go today?
No, I mean, just thank you for having us on here. Our main priority as a studio is to give players something that's really fun that they'll really love to play, and like just like right now, like we're talking about all the good old times when we were playing LAN parties in the barracks and stuff. We want to give those memories to people. We want to give them the good old times that they're going to remember like 10, 15 years from now. So
Beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think gamers are smarter than a lot of studios say that they are. And I think they know what they want, and I'm planning to cater to them, like really focus in. And again, like I'm open to all the feedback and any kind of like positive and even negative criticisms. Like bring it all. It's like we're here making a game for, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, cool, man. Like that's okay. Love you all. Like it's great. Like Lewis was saying, follow wish list our game Victory's Great Outflank, all of our social medias, Old Glory Studios across all platforms. Check us out.
Awesome. Matt, Lewis, love what you guys are doing. We're going to share all the links they mentioned about to Old Glory Studios, the fundraise, everything on our player driven page. I'm excited to watch you guys progress. I'm excited to see the game come out and learn more. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I wish you guys the best of luck.
Thanks very
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you.